team. Bobcat, the reason I say team is because I like to treat listeners how I would any team, which is try to expose them to people who are at the top of their game, been at the top of their game, still at the top of their game, that may maybe assist them by listening or teach them something or maybe inspire them. And I know you will. First of all, because I know you for a long time, but I just know you've got a lot to offer. Some of the best learning you will ever do will be travelling. Give yourself space, time to creatively think, to learn, to meet people, or take a vacation with your family. Give yourself that time. And there's no better person or people or company to help you than the people at Tripperdeal. Their experienced agents will look after you from start to finish. They will plan your flights, your accommodation, your car, your excursions, whatever you need. If you want to plan a trip of a lifetime, Tripperdeal is the place to go. Tripperdeal.com.au. So I just want to start by just drawing out some feelings that you've had in your career. When you were told you're going to play for your country, what comes straight to mind?
Yeah, it just tingles, blown away.
I tingled asking you that question.
Yeah, it was, and then to go to the next level, to initially get told that you're playing for Australia or selected for Australia. And then I remember Wayne Bennett actually telling me that I'm making my debut in a test match, and then to stand there with the jersey on, anthem, family and partner in the crowd. It's just to pinch yourself. Like, it's actually, I've had some moments in my life and in my career where I actually have had to go, is this happening? And I'll, a little origin story later on, but those sorts of moments, I hope I never forget them.
How good. Can we reenact when Wayne told you?
Yeah, so in Wayne's sort of way, in my hotel room, he comes and knocks on the door, just stands there, appears at the door, and basically just drops the news on me and says, mate, you're going to be making your debut for Australia this weekend. And I didn't know what to think. I was shocked, scared, excited. Tingles again in the body, but mainly excitement, and I guess in some ways a little bit of relief because you get picked in the squad and you go, far out, I hope I'm going to play a game,
Yeah.
But then to get selected in a test match in the first one as well, I was blown away.
So you closed the door, thanks Wayne, see ya. Straight on the phone?
Straight on the blower, parents, partner.
Who's now your wife?
Yep, now the wife, and they sort of tried to. My old man had to sort out passports and all that stuff in the time frame and get sorted and everything as well. And we're only talking about a couple of weeks ago. Actually, they come over to visit, and I think he actually had to come to Newcastle to pick up his passport because it was out of use by date and stuff. And it was only on that day. Then they drove straight to Sydney to fly
out
to make sure, and then come over to the test match.
Because they were in Dubbo.
Yeah, they were living in Dubbo. Yeah, so. But yeah, that phone call, that every single moment, I suppose, good and bad over times. They've had a few of them. They've had some bad ones and some ones where I've wanted to go home and stuff. But that was a good one to make.
This is such a great story to start with. So, righto, that's obviously a childhood dream. That's a pinnacle. Well, let's drop it down to State of Origin, which others consider a pinnacle as well. You played State of Origin in what year?
I played State of Origin in 2001, actually. I only played about 30 NRL games and didn't get picked in game one and didn't expect to. I was a long way off. And we actually played the Sharks at Shark Park on a Sunday arvo, and they picked the squads then on the Sunday night. It used to be just by the news or the old 6 o'clock news or whatever then. But I actually got a bit of a heads up. I got a phone call on the way driving back from Shark Park. And I still remember the exact spot where it was when I got the phone call. It was at this place near Beverly Hills on the left there. Johnny Wilson, who I used to play, he sort of gave me a heads up through, he found out some way through a person. They just rang me and said, you're gonna play for New South Wales.
I'm trying to think of this game because I was with you in 01.
Yeah, we
Nathan
played
Kalis off the kickoff. Did he step off his right foot and hit Luke Bird down the wing?
He probably did. He could have.
Remember that play?
Yes, I do remember the play. I actually got put on report in that game as well, so I had to go to the judiciary. But I got picked for my first ever Origin, and I was freaking out, going far out Origin, no way. as I said, I was still trying to comprehend that I'd actually played NRL, let alone getting picked for New South Wales. Game 2.
Same phone call to mum and dad?
Straight away, same phone call. Yep, definitely to mum and dad. And then, I obviously went into camp and had to go to the judiciary because I accidentally Preston Campbell. I actually lifted him a little bit high in a game. He was playing for the Sharks, and thankfully I got off. But rolling into camp, just going, dead set. Yeah, I was going, what am I doing here?
Was Freddie captain?
Freddie was captain as well. Yeah, so 0-1, and then we actually won that game, and so that was game 2 in the series to draw it. And then unfortunately went to Brizzy, and that was Alfie Langer came back.
Alfie's return. Stepped under Mick Vella to score.
So we had...
Sorry, Mick. Mick will listen to this.
We actually got, pumped in that game, and the Alfie's return wasn't the greatest memory for me, but just still like to be playing for New South Wales, and it was crazy.
Yeah. Wasn't Wayne a genius bringing Alfie back?
Well, I spoke a little bit before about how they used to announce it, on the radio and then put it on the news and stuff. I distinctly remember, and I'd found out that I was going to be picked again, and I remember listening to it was like the 6 o'clock news or something for that game 3, and it said number 7, Alan Langer, Warrington Wolves.
Yeah.
And I went, what? No way.
Yeah,
Alan Langer's coming back, but not. We didn't obviously know what was going to come off the back of that, and then I sort of didn't play for a couple of years, and then was lucky enough to sort of find my way back in the team in 2004. But
so you won it in 2004, I think.
Yeah, we won the series in 2004. I played game 1 and game 2, and then actually Freddie didn't play in game 1 and game 2. He come back and played in that game 3 in 2004.
That's right.
So I missed out on the squad, but the squad won the series.
And then you won it in 2005?
I won it in 2005.
Bedsy captain.
Yeah, Ricky Stewart coached us and played all 3 games. But that was where I had this out of body experience at Brisbane. We played a game at Suncorp.
Yep.
And I remember sitting in a circle, and Ricky Stewart was addressing us sitting in the semicircle before the game. And it felt like I was in a dream, a dead set. I remember him talking and giving instructions and stuff, and I actually sat there for a sec and thought I was in a dream. And I still remember going into the shed, toilets in there, and looking in the mirror and seeing the jersey on. I actually had to put water on my face and go, I'm going out to play Origin here. I actually thought that I was in a dream. Yeah, at Suncorp, and then because a 2-minute warning bell goes off, everything's just crazy, and then we run out to a packed house at Suncorp. It was phenomenal.
Isn't that amazing that you could go through that, and then that adrenaline running out, and then once you're out there, you're calm and present and perform like you did.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I always remember that spot in those sheds, and just feeling like I was just in this dream. It was bizarre.
Wow. So we've gone Australia, we've gone New South Wales. Let's go to your debut, round 2 in the year 2000. It was actually my first full-time year in rugby league as well. So I always found that, me personally, one of my biggest highlights was when someone makes a debut.
Yeah.
Even back then. So I was pretty young myself. So, but I love debuts. I love it because somewhere in and amongst it, there's a story that kid wants it more than someone else that had a similar dream growing up. There's a story, there's a sacrifice, there's something that got this debut, and there's usually a backstory of people that helped them get there, which I love. So tell me when you got told you'll make your debut, and then I'm sure some of these stories will come.
Well, yeah, and it'll probably make, once I go into the stories, to actually be standing there and playing NRL is totally out of my belief and out of something that I ever thought that was going to come off. But Brian Smith was a coach, as you know, you were there with us, and he gave me an opportunity in that to do summer training block. We won the reserve grade competition in '99 for Para, and I got an opportunity to basically train and trial through that summer. And then he told me, I still remember in the pre-season, so we had Jim Dimmick and Jason Smith and Nathan Highmarsh and Ian Highmarsh and Daniel Watt, all these blokes at first graders, and Heine was younger than me. Nathan Caliphs was same age. These guys had been around the club and stuff, and I remember Smithy in this. He had us all the forwards together. Justin Morgan and all these guys are all, and as he does, he throws little tests out from time to time, and he actually said, "Oh, who thinks they can play first grade?" And I was just there for this summer, and I was sitting there going, "Far out," and put my hand up. And of course he picked me out and goes, "So you're sitting here with all these blokes, you think you're going to play first grade?" And I'm going, "Far out, I wish I didn't put my hand up."
Jared McCracken.
Like all of these fellas. No, Crackers had just finished
Tigers,
and Dino had just finished as well. But, like all those. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, "Why did I put my hand up here?" And he goes, "Do you think you can play?" And I just sort of went, "Oh, well, yeah, I do." Like I wasn't going to say no after that. And then sort of trained through the summer, and then he gave me a trial up at Longreach. It was on Australia Day because in 2000 the comp was all brought forward because of the Olympics. So, had a trial game in up there in Rockhampton on Australia Day, and just played the Tigers up there. And then all of a sudden I didn't, get picked for round one, and then round two. I'm working at Parramatta Leagues at the time because I was working in the cellar, bits and pieces and stuff as well, and still training. And he said, "You're going to make your debut at Para Stadium against the Broncos." And that Broncos team, they ended up winning the comp that year. It was unlimited interchange, and they had, Tallis and Thorne and Sivanasiva, Webke, Lockyer, Sailor, Lottie Takiri. Like it was ridiculous.
And they ended up getting us in the prelim final.
Yeah, they did.
Same team.
They did. Yeah. And but to sit there and make my debut, but you asked the question about the stories in the lead up. So I could talk about this for a long time because I was playing a few years before in Dubbo. I'd never made the Group 11 Dubbo rep side. I still had not made, didn't make possibles, probables. I'd never made sort of the rep team, and then I went for this open trial at the Parramatta under-20s. And they said, "We'll come back for another trial the next week." And then they said, "We're going to sign you on a 1-year deal for the Para under-20s." And I'm like, far out. Johnny Colk ended up being our coach of the under-20s. And I played a few games. I was in and out of the starting side, on the bench. Didn't play semis, sort of got dropped. And then it was under-20s. And the next year they changed it to under-19s. So I was too old for 19s. And then you had to try and make the Reggie's squad. So, as you know better than anyone, that the top 25, 30 guys, and then there was the next tier of guys, 15 or so, and then there was about 10 of us were training in that part-time squad. So I was a long way down the list. If you didn't make the reserve grade side, you go back and play local footy
for Kellyville.
So I was playing for the 98. I was playing for the Kellyville Bushrangers, with a heap of boys, that sort of were local fellas, and we'd all come from everywhere. But anyway, in this particular season, I'd done my knee in, I'd rode off my car running late. I was a landscaper running late to work. But everything that could go wrong went wrong in that year. And then right towards the end, I'd just written off my car, and our house got broken into, and they stole all our gear. So I remember, talk about these phone calls to the parents. I actually rang mum and dad and said, "Look, I'm out. I'm done. I've given it 2 years. I'm going to move back home." And they were like, "Yeah, righto." Well, my old man said, "I've got a bloke I know, he's a landscaper, come back and you can finish your trade and all that stuff." And the next day, because I'd written off my car, I had to go into Parramatta and sign some health forms and stuff because I'd had an operation on my knee. So I had to catch the bus in there to go sign these forms.
So there's injuries amongst this too.
Yeah, so there was the knee injury which put me out for a long time and stuff. And then I was standing back at that bus stop, made the decision to move home. And Peter Sharp, who was the reserve grade coach, drove past from the offices there and said, "Do you want to lift home?" So I jumped in the car and, what I do, I'm sick of catching this bus. And as he was dropping me home, he said, "Have you thought about next year?" And I said, "Oh, I'm done. I'm moving home. I've given it a couple of years." Yeah. So he sort of paused for a second and said, "Oh, have you thought about giving it another crack?" So I went, all right. So I went home that night and just tossed and turned all night, like, should I stay? Should I just go and get on with life, finish off, move back home to Dubbo, finish off my trade and just do that? And I just tossed and turned, and then I sort of thought about it and think this night, have I been giving myself the best opportunity in these 2 years? Probably the answer was maybe no. And I came to the realisation that the reasons were because I actually didn't believe that I was good enough. I was the fella that couldn't make Dubbo rep side and come into this under-20s team with all these Australian schoolboys, and I'm going, what am I doing here? And then the next year I'm like, I'm not good enough to play Reggie's, what am I doing here? So I made the decision, I'm going to stay for a year, do everything in my power, train harder, better diet, be a better workmate, be a better all this, just little improvements everywhere. And I fought my way into the Reggie's team, and then we went on to win the reserve grade. Smithy sort of grabbed me in the office after that and said, I'll give you that summer and trial, and there I am standing against the Broncos in round 2, making my first grade debut.
So there's so much gold in that, but I think the real gold was someone believed in you.
Yeah.
Someone, I actually take a lot of pride in that. I would love to think there's a player out there now that says, Hayden Knowles believed in me. You know, like what you just said about Sharpie, he's one of the best men you'll meet in rugby league. And I don't know if he's a listener, but I don't know if he knows how to use the podcast app or anything, but I'm sure that will be one of his best moments as well when he saw you debut and followed your career. You know, I got to work with you for a couple of years, and then still, which we're going to go to now, your grand final, still remember. I'd worked with you for a couple of years, and it was unfortunate that the club we were at had to let players go, and none of the staff, I remember, wanted you to go. None of your best mates, Kalis, Hindy, all those, no one wanted you to leave, but it was still, you take a lot of pride watching your career from then on. But the grand final, I was in a pub in Switzerland. Myself and my wife, Nicole, we wandered around the town, visited all these places to ask who will put the Australian Rugby League grand final on TV. And I remember it because there was a couple of other Aussie tourists in there as well, and we were cheering this grand final. And I went berserk when you chased down Crocker to save the game, basically. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Like it was, there's these famous grand final moments, there's the Sattler tackle, there's this tackle, that tackle, but I don't know if that one ever gets much of a start. I mean, even way back when Freddie chased down and tackled Mal Meninga over a sideline in the grand final, there's a lot of these famous grand final moments, but I don't know if yours gets played that much, but I remember it clearly. And tell us about your grand final experience, but definitely take me to that tackle.
Yeah, so there's so many sort of stories within that as well. But, unfortunately we'd been there together in 01. And, that heartache of losing a grand final, my second year of playing NRL and super successful season and great crew and staff and players and behind the scenes staff. And, it hurts. It still hurts now that you lose, It hurts. But... You learnt from it, and I did want to stay on it at Parramatta through that period. Unfortunately, it just sort of didn't work out that way, but got an opportunity. I went to a Bulldogs team that, I went there heading into the 2003 season, and they just won 19 in a row in 02. Like this club, this team, they were phenomenal. And, there were some guys that had to leave, some salary cap, obviously the salary cap breach and stuff, but we made the prelim in 03 with a lot of the players took a cut to stay, keep the majority of the squad together. In 03 we made the prelim final for the Bulldogs, and then 04 it was just this, us and the Roosters right throughout this season just had it was this big ding-dong battles, and it was probably 2 or 3 years old really, They obviously won the comp in 02 and then the Panthers in 03, but through those few years, the two clubs had these massive battles, and right through that season in 04, we were sort of 1 and 2. I think we might have even ended up on the same points, sort of heading into the semis, and it ends up coming together, that these two teams are going to face off in the grand final. And in the prelim final the week before, we beat the Panthers at the footy stadium, and Steve Price, who was our captain, actually got injured early doors in the prelim final. So on the Tuesday of that grand final, we sort of found out that Pricey probably wasn't going to come through, and we didn't think too much of it. And Steve Folkes, I was walking through the office at one stage on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and he just grabbed me and said, "You got a sec?" And he said, "Mate, how would you feel about being captain of the team this week?" And I was like, I dead set nearly fell over. I was in shock. I'd never been captain. It was my second year at the club. I hadn't been captain of this team before. Actually, I hadn't been a captain of an NRL team, obviously, before. The last time I was captain was St John's Open's school team. We got pumped in all 3 games. So I don't know if he knew my record heading into that grand final, but
he saw something in you, mate.
But then all of a sudden I'm standing there. It's Brad Fittler's last ever game in NRL,
Huge,
and he's the opposition captain. And we're doing the coin toss, and I'm standing there freaking out again. And obviously got to lead the boys out on the day, and I was just the fill-in captain. But yeah, it was a tight game and sort of end to end, and they had us under the pump right through the second half. We sort of scored a couple of tries to get in front, and but then I just still remember them. They had all these little plays, inside balls off Fittler, and they kept bombarding us, and we just sort of kept repelling them. And I actually haven't still watched the whole game, but I've seen snippets of it. I've been mean to sort of sit down and catch the game at some stage, but
just play it with your kids.
Yeah, well, that's what.
Come on, kids, sit down.
But I haven't watched the full game yet. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough to sort of see the last 10 seconds a few times, and the last 30 seconds.
So what was the score when you...
It was 16-13. We were up with sort of. I think there was. I don't know.
If this was a game-saving, I'm not exaggerating. My memory was it was huge. It was the game-saving tackle.
Well, right? Luke Patton, who was our fullback, he assures me that he would have folded him and done it anyway. But so there was probably another line of defence. But I guess, yeah, to every single person that plays sport in a team sport, yeah, we spoke about representing your country and playing Origin, and don't get me wrong, they are unbelievable things, and they're those individual honours, and it's more, your family and stuff. But, as you know, being involved to win that premiership, to the moment when that siren goes, the whistle blows, and you've won the comp, it's like the work, those pre-seasons, like I'd only been there, as I said, it was my second pre-season, and I honestly thought I'd trained hard before that, but far out. Some of the dark places we went to in those training sessions, and then to enjoy that moment, and eventually back with all those close family and friends. But it's all those the players, the staff, the whole squad that you train with and do all that, and that moment that I just felt just a rush through my whole body as soon as it happened. It was just it was a crazy experience.
You know what I wouldn't mind doing is talking about some coaches, because there's a lot of listeners of this podcast that are coaches or teachers or trainers and athletes are listening. But I wouldn't mind going there because, we've already talked there about a critical Peter Sharp moment that I'm sure people have now been inspired. That's all some kids need sometimes, is someone to believe in them. But you just mentioned Steve Folkes' name, who I've never been privileged enough to work with, but I've never heard anything but good stories about this guy. Let's talk about a few coaches and their influences on you and their characteristics that would help a listener.
Yeah. Oh, look, I've been that lucky, from Brian Smith to Steve Folkes to Phil Gould to Wayne Bennett to Craig Bellamy. It's crazy that Laurie Daly, Ricky Stewart. I was lucky enough to have these guys as coaches. A few that really stick out for me, I guess, and these are big impact moments in my life. It was Brian Smith to see that and give me that opportunity to play NRL, and I don't think he gets enough credit for the coach that he was and that he is. The the skills and the stuff that players we're working with every day are doing this stuff. That, you know, he was doing the attention to detail stuff, the skill level, even the way the processes in games and how to manipulate games and how to do stuff within games. We had no idea. It was my first real NRL coach, so we were getting all this information. I had no idea. Like I just assumed that that's what everyone gets, you know. But his information and detail and all that was crazy.
I caught up with him only a month before this is getting recorded.
Yeah, right.
I spent a day with him recently. When you're with him, you got this kind of grateful feeling, because even in my own career, he pretty much gave me my start.
Yeah.
And had a huge influence on me. And he's still one of the smartest men you'll ever meet, and I actually still think he has a lot to offer. If I was just say out of the blue, a club said, Hayden, we want you to head up this team. You know, the first person I would employ would be him.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think if I was a young coach, I would want to surround myself with someone like Brian.
Yeah, his detail, and you know, and through those periods, obviously, you know, had the strength and conditioning people we had around the traps too. I'm fortunate to be able to do some coaching as well, and you know, we're here at South Leagues. I coach locally here, have been over time. Some of the drills and you know the speed drills and skill drills.
Are you still doing my drills?
Yeah, I'm still doing them.
Good
so
work, mate.
I'm
still doing Brian.
I need to get you back, get you in. But you know, these sorts of things that are relevant then are relevant now, and you know, from speed, but the coaching and you know, and then I won't go right through them all. But to go to Steve Folkes at that time, I spoke about the training and the work ethic and all that. But the biggest impact he had on me was his loyalty to his team, and if you were doing a good job, he'd leave you alone. So it was harder to get in the team than get out if you're winning games and you're doing your job. And true to his word, if you know I'd miss a few too many tackles or I wasn't, you know, applying myself enough, he'd come and chip you. But he'd go 3 and 4 weeks of competition games, and I remember actually saying to him, mate, is there any, you know,
talking to him?
Yeah, and he goes, you don't want to hear from me. He said that to me.
Right.
Yeah, and true to his word, he'd put me on the bench. I was on the bench, and I was nearly, you know, at this stage going to get dropped to reserve grade early in my first season there. And he gave me a bit of a rocket and sort of sparked me back up. But then to go on and have, you know, guys like Wayne Bennett, you know, was lucky enough to have him on a couple of tours. Just the way his care for his players and his interest in the person. You know, being able to listen to Phil Gould do some of his pre-game speeches and everything around them, and you know, Craig Bellamy, he did a talk here for us at South not long ago, and yeah, it was so good to see him. Just his same goes, his care and passion and detail and stuff as well. So I guess over time, a little bit like players you play alongside, the coaches that we've been able to have. You look at a little bit of everything and go, far out, they gave me so much in my life.
It's so interesting, because even myself, if anyone ever sat there and asked me about influence I've had, Brian's one, Wayne is one, similar examples.
Yeah.
Wayne still, only yesterday I had a phone call, and I consider a mentor and a friend.
Yeah.
Brian, the same little things they cared about, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's little bits there that I know people listening to who are developing their own coaching. Like, that's kind of where the magic is. I was with Scotty Campbell the day Steve Folkes died, and Scotty Campbell was your conditioner back then for that premiership, 2004. Yeah. What a great man he is.
Champion.
Who I've had work with me on a number of staff, and he's got more grand final tattoos than anyone. He's got 4 different teams on his back. So he does something well, Scotty. But I remember, mate, like, he was gone. He was rattled with the news.
Yeah.
He loved Steve Folkes, like the same way I love a lot of the coaches I've worked for, and sounds like you, but Steve Folkes had an impact on a lot of people by the sounds of it. I wish I had actually met him. I've worked with and met a lot of coaches, but I never actually got to know him.
Yeah, there's no fuss or fanfare about him. He's just low-key human. And yeah, I feel that feeling in my stomach now that he's not with us anymore, you know. I sort of was lucky enough to be coached by him for a while, but I call him a mate and that as well. So it was you know, he's the fittest, you know. I've looked at my old man over time, who's, you know, pretty much my whole life. He's always had a six-pack and fit as anything, and I've never had one. Yeah. And Steve Folkes was the same. I look at those two, and you know, Folkes, he was
might inspire me.
Folkes, he was like always training. And my first pre-season there, we're doing a triathlon.
He was into his triathlon, wasn't he?
Big time. So we're doing a triathlon, and he's ahead of me, and he's actually. Like, we're running past each other on the running track. He's ahead, and I'm going this way. He's going, keep going, mate. And I'm going, far out. I'm supposed to. He's the coach here, you know. But he,
mate, he had the $10,000 bike. You had, like, the Kmart.
Yeah, I wish I had something. But yeah.
The quality of the bike's important.
Yeah, it helps. But I don't think it would have helped me. It wouldn't have helped me that much. But, yeah, his demeanour and, you know, his work ethic. But, yeah, mate, around that, the loyalty and everything.
Even believing in you to make you captain. So he saw something in you. He saw leadership qualities in you. You captained the team then for the next, basically, decade. Let's talk about that, because there are a lot of listeners, nearly every listener on here is really interested in the leadership part of their careers, or whatever they're doing. Are they helping or inspiring younger athletes, or there's a lot of elite people as well. But the leadership topic, I mean, everyone on this podcast listens and studies it, but you lived and breathed it, and you had to learn it on the run.
Definitely.
And you had to maintain an authenticity about you. Like you couldn't just become exactly like someone else. Like you are you. But what other qualities do you think Steve Folkes saw in you, and what did you have to learn and develop as a leader?
Plenty. And, you know, you mentioned Scotty Campbell before, and he was our strength and conditioning person, and, you know, took us through those pre-seasons. But you know, he's a mate as well, and from those times. But I guess, you know, he might have had a little bit of input in this stuff as well. But yeah, the leadership one, I'd been at a club at Parramatta, and a good mate of ours, Nathan Kalis, was my age, and he was our captain from, you know, 20 years of age or 21 when we're coming into first grade. So I was lucky enough to sort of see how he applied himself, and then our captain at the time was Steve Price. But then, you know, going through Darren Lockyer's and Danny Badiris's and these guys that I was lucky enough to play alongside and have as captains, Brad Fittler, you know, as well. But I fell into a trap really early on. So obviously I was lucky enough to stand in. I was lucky enough we won the comp, and I was captain. Yeah. But all of a sudden I actually felt in that first season, I felt like I sort of had to change in a way. Not what I was doing or not the way I was playing, but I started to get really worried about everyone else. I actually started to burn energy on, is he right? Like, he's over there doing that. Is he, like, I was always really, and it was starting to drain me. It was actually probably having an impact on my performance. So especially that first 12 months, I actually had to go, the reason you end up becoming captain was because of, I guess, everything you'd sort of done in the past. So it was like, well, I made a bit of a switch in it then. So then my mentality was to be, I'm going to be, every single day, I'm going to be the most energetic, enthusiastic person at training every single day. I don't care if I'm sick, sore, tired, win, loss, draw. This is who I'm going to be bouncing every day. And that's challenging sometimes, you know, when you're losing. And we went through some real rough patches, and probably the toughest period in my career was 2008 when we finished last, and some other challenges with that as well. But after a little bit, I started to then think about, well, Nathan Kalis, he was an actions man, you know, he spoke as well, he was actions, you know. Darren Lockyer, who was lucky enough to play alongside, like, he'd hardly say anything until we'd just run out, but he'd come up with a big play in a game. Danny Badiris, a game in Queensland in Origin, kicked off, and there's footage of it, you know, he launches himself at Shane Webke. So everyone has their own way of leadership, and that was the thing any leader, or I guess myself, had to work out, that find the balances to still stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest one. So,
well, there would have been influences in you that those guys had, but there would have been stuff from a kid and how you were brought up. There'd be so much we could go to in there, but you've just given some tips to any leaders out there. Is actions is one, but also staying pretty true to you, and you acknowledge that there's lessons to learn. No one's an expert on being a leader straight away. Like there's things you learn along the way. Probably brings me to, I just mentioned when you were younger, is there any influence you feel now I've mentioned it, that guided you on this work ethic about you, this energy? Was it your dad?
Yeah.
By the sounds of it.
It was definitely my dad and, my brothers, the amount of time we spent in the backyard and, practicing skill and training and all that stuff. I watched everything that they did and, especially my old man was a roof tiler for a long time. He'd come home in the middle of summer off being on roofs and he'd go and do weights and go for runs and they out the back and, I'm sitting on the lounge eating crap food, after school or whatever, but those sort of things. And then the older you get and seeing, watching the family and the way they trained and the way they did stuff. And eventually I got there, I went off on a little bit of probably made some poor choices in lack of training and diet and stuff for a period. I'm talking in my teens and stuff. But yeah, once I sort of found that later on, that's the way I live now. I've got 4 kids myself and, obviously they play sport every day, but obviously want to try and be a bit of a role model for them. But through that, the leadership stuff, same goes, I guess, with the coaching. For those that want to be a coach, not going, I'm going to be like this person, I'm going to implement what they do, because you might have a different cattle in your team, but if you can take little bits and pieces and still stay true to yourself, is the most important one. But you obviously want to try and have an impact on people too in whatever way you can. Yeah.
We talked about some young stuff, then we talked about your own kids. I think it's still important to maybe we share the same beliefs about kids should be playing multiple sports, doing lots of different type of athletic development type stuff in a natural, fun way. You played soccer. The Europeans call it football. You played soccer until you were 13. You didn't even play rugby league.
No, I didn't play any competitive rugby league until, pretty much 13s, 14s. I played soccer, I played basketball. I'm not saying at any level, any of these sports, but I played, cricket, soccer, touch footy. We'd play some backyard footy and footy with our mates and stuff. But my weekend sport, it was soccer in the winter and as a kid till I was 12, and it was cricket in the summer. And
because there's a story there, mate, too. There's a lot of teachers out there with kids that are 13 years old or 15-year-olds that miss a rep team and that's the end of the world. Like, you didn't even play rugby league till you were 14. You didn't make any rep teams. You nearly gave it away at 20. You then debuted. You then play for New South Wales and Australia and win a competition. And now I've had a career post in the game. It's a great story. Is there any wonder why I asked him to come on the show?
I'm a massive believer, and obviously I've got 2 boys and 2 girls, and they love sport. And I've always said to them, the importance for me in team sport is huge. Obviously, you can play individual sports if you like, but from a young age, I've said to them, we want you to play team sport. My wife Olivia and I have said team sports, at least one team sport in each right throughout the season. And, our kids play basketball, the touch footy to OzTag to everything, AFL, cricket, whatever's going, they'll have a crack at. Probably have time off school most of the time, but I'm a huge believer in that, and I guess from my own childhood and then from being around sport for a long time, just seeing every sport helps another one too. So, I'm watching our boys play touch footy last week, and one of his mates does a little basketball shot over the top, and his mate scores a try in the corner. Like basketball and the vision and balance and stuff you get from soccer, and the peripherals 360 from AFL, and then they all help each other anyway, and the balance and stuff from soccer and everything. It all, and speed and that vision and everything helps your footy and everything as well. So if they eventually pick a sport,
Yeah.
whatever that might be, everything they've done in previously is going to help them anyway. But I just think the variety, mixing with different circles, hanging with different people, getting out of your comfort zone, trying something as well. I'm a huge believer in it.
I know you are, and you know I am. But we had to share that.
Yeah, no.
But you actually lived it.
Yeah.
You know, you're living proof of it. Let's just finish off then. You've got into coaching. You coach a bit. You've done a lot of well-being. You've done a lot of welfare within the NRL. You're now in a leadership role with an NRL club. How are you finding that? What are you hoping? Well, it's great that it's your old club.
Yeah.
The club that you captained to some pretty special moments. You're now in a leadership role there. How's that going? And what do you think you're going to bring to that club? Because you've gone to work for a great coach in Cameron Serrato, who's just taken on a big job.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's another moment where I actually go, is this happening, you know? I'm working in sort of that leadership culture, a bit of well-being space as well, and still fortunate I get to live in Newcastle, and I travel down a few days a week. Predominantly to work with the players at the moment, trying to get to know the players and sort of build some connection within the group as well. And we all, believe is the same thing, and Cameron's a huge believer in a connected team and a connected club. Hopefully it helps performance as well, and that's been the way, just to build relationships, get to know each other at the moment, players and staff, and as we go on, an aspect of my role will be in that leadership space as well. A lot of the stuff we've been talking about, to actually to basically, we're not going to, no one's going to come and say, oh, this guy's been a leader since he was 6 years old, he's got the job, or whatever it is. And I've always been a true believer, whatever sport, you don't have to wear the badge or have the C next to your name to be a leader anyway.
Mate. You'll have leadership from the bottom in that team.
Yeah.
You'll have, and I love that you're actually going to work for Cam Serrato, who I've also worked with, who also had been influenced by Brian Smith.
Yeah.
His detail, that he'll embrace. He obviously believes in you. You're saying you're pinching yourself, you're going back to work for that club, but he's doing the Peter Sharps on you now, saying, mate, I believe you're the best person for this job, which you are. He does believe in the most connected team is usually the best defensive team, and the best defensive team usually wins.
Yeah.
So you have gone, there's a little sweet spot in your working career right now, I feel. Like you're definitely the right person in this leadership space, but even with the person you've gone to work for and the club you've gone to work for, there's some special things happening in your life, but also in the lives of those players. I think I can feel it. You're going to do to them, quite a few of them, what people like Sharpie's done for you, I feel.
Yeah, I hope so. I suppose it's just the... to be in around, like we've got already, I've been there, this is week 4 of the pre-season, and they're a great group. They're a good crew. They're just, they're working hard at the moment, and there's some challenges through the pre-season. There's some young guys in there coming through their first pre-season ever, and it does take you back, but they're a great crew, and they're willing to just jump in and have a crack. And that's all you can ask at the moment. Is there going to be challenges? Yeah, there's going to be challenges. All of the other 16 NRL teams and everyone in sport as well, the challenges don't stop coming. But that's, I guess for myself, in my own personal experience, you learn that much about when you're losing and when you have tough times. So hopefully we don't have too many tough times, but...
They've had a few of late.
Yeah, but you certainly learn a lot about yourself through those periods, and it makes the other times better as well.
Well, mate, I'm just thinking back in your own career. You captained the team in 08 when they came last, but you also turned that around the following year. You're in a prelim final to make a grand final in 09. So you've had good and bad.
Yeah.
They've had a bit of bad lately, but they seem like they're on the up. I want to finish with one last story. You wrote Peter Sharp a letter. If anyone's watching, write somebody a letter in the same way you did, and because it must have meant the world to him, but also it was a real grateful little experience for yourself. I've done the same with some people. I was waiting for you to send me a letter once, but I
didn't have your address.
You didn't have my address.
Well,
But let's share that story, because if we inspire anyone to do anything today from this, there's a lot of little lessons there that people will take bits of. But this, if everybody does it, I highly recommend do it.
Yeah, look, I'm massive on connection. I'm massive on people, and too often I'd been saying to Sharpie for ages, I need to, look after you, or buy you a beer or something. Like, it was all these little throwaway comments, and yeah, I was watching a guy presented one day, Hugh Van Cullenberg presented, and spoke about gratitude and everything, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks what I needed to do, and I just wrote. It didn't take me long at all. I had to do a couple of draft runs of it, but I hand wrote Sharpie a letter, and I wanted to personally hand it to him as well. So as things would turn out, I was actually fortunate. I was doing some commentary at the time, and the Bulldogs were playing Parramatta, and Sharpie he'd been moved around a little bit in coaching and all that, but he'd gone back to Parramatta in a recruitment capacity, and I asked if I could meet up with him, and met him in the tunnel at Homebush there at the stadium, and basically had a quick chat to him and just gave him this letter. And I just wanted to say, I don't know if he realised how much of an impact he did on all that belief and what it did for me at that time. But if it wasn't for Peter Sharp, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't have played NRL. I wouldn't have, obviously there's some other, people and family and everything like that certainly helped me as well. But if he didn't believe in me at that time, I wouldn't have played NRL. So if you can go and sit with someone face to face, and we've been lucky enough to sit here with you today, and thank you for helping those and what you were able to do for us on the field and transition all that. And like I said, I still use that stuff today. But go and sit with someone, go out of your way to call someone, write them a letter, just say thank you, because often we don't do that stuff. We get stuck in our little world. So yeah.
That's a wrap. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Champion.
Awesome.